ayahuasca. Welcome to Green Pill. First question, will you take the green pill?
Yes, I will.
Love it. Awesome. So, Emilia is a psychedelic integration therapist, founder of Integration Living outside of Boston, Massachusetts. She's seeing clients, patients around Massachusetts, and her focus is really on preparation for psychedelic journeys and integration thereafter, as well as tools, mindset, modalities to use while you're in the journey and in the experience. A really
Mhm.
unique one today. I'm excited to learn more about how she counsels her patients, what folks do in a psychedelic experience, why they might go there, the things to avoid both before, during, and after, the things to do before, during, and after, etc. I should say that she's adjunct faculty at Bunker Hill Community College. She
Mhm.
facilitated a number of psilocybin retreats and has been in this space for quite some time with some background in group therapy, art therapy, and dare I say, traditional psychotherapy. So, with that said, Amelia, you've had such a wide ranges of experience. What was your personal journey with mental health and psychedelics?
So I found psychedelics at the time in my life when I was searching for more. I had a pretty good life overall. I had a pretty successful counseling practice at the time, and I had amazing friends. I traveled a lot, but something was missing. And I felt like there was more to life. And also around that same time, I lost two people that were very close to me. And I looked at their lives and I thought, those were two people that worked so hard and were so successful. And then they died at a fairly young age. So that made me question, what is this all for? What is my life about? So it was a spiritual search in a way. And also at the same time, I was burning out as a therapist. I was working with a lot of severely traumatized clients and I was running out of tools. So I heard a podcast about ayahuasca. That was about 7 years ago. And that was a big thing. At the time, everyone was going to Peru for ayahuasca retreats. So I decided to attend a retreat, which was the first time ever in my life, honestly, trying a psychedelic or any illicit substance at all, really. So I did a lot of research and finally found a place. I went, and what I experienced there was what I heard people describe the psychedelic experience to be like, which they tend to feel like years of psychotherapy in one session. And I really felt that. I felt like I was able to access such deep levels of my psyche that I normally didn't have access to. And it all happened in those 3 sessions that I had there. And I remember thinking, why is this not being used in psychotherapy? This is a no-brainer. Like, why is this not a tool that is available? So when I came back to the United States, I was faced with the reality, which was at the time that there was no way really for me to use psychedelics in my work legally. So I started this search and also I didn't have anyone to talk to about this. I didn't have any friends who were interested in that. So I really focused for the next 7 years or so. I focused on just trying to explore this as much as I could, trying to find community of other people and professionals who were interested in this work. I went to every possible training I could find, any possible retreat, many of them outside of the United States, because that's what was available to me at the time, some of them inside. And it's been a very rich journey of learning a lot about myself, the healing process, and also psychedelics, of course. And it's a journey that really transformed my personal life and my professional life. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for going all the way back into your personal experience and drawing it to the present
Mm-hmm.
professional life. For folks listening, what is ayahuasca in a nutshell, if you don't mind? And then we'll go on to the next question.
Yeah, so ayahuasca is a vine used in Peru mostly, and other places too. And it's a brew that people drink, and it has DMT in it. And yeah, it can be very powerful. The experiences, for many people, there's going to be a lot of physical discomfort. A lot of people tend to have a lot of purging with ayahuasca, but also a lot of amazing spiritual and deep healing experience.
And could you tell folks, I guess I know for myself, I believe, that how it differs from what they might think of as like a mushroom trip, maybe in duration and in intensity and in experience overall?
Yeah, so comparing to a mushroom trip, ayahuasca trip can be more intense. in general, on all these different levels. So bodily discomfort can be more prominent, and it can be that there's, again, depending on what kind of setting people use it in, because again, it's not easily accessible necessarily. It's changing now. There's more access to it in the United States. But back then, when I was starting out, I had no really access to it in the United States. Oftentimes, people may do it in a setting that's like Peru or Brazil, where there's a cultural component to it. So that's important to pay attention to, because there's groups of people that have been using this for centuries. So there's a whole, just like mushrooms, of course, but there's a whole cultural component that comes along with it. Versus mushrooms, I feel like there's been more of use in the United States. They're they're easier to access. So people may be more familiar with them. And yes, the trip can be less intense. And with ayahuasca, there's more of a concern of there's certain medication that are really dangerous to mix with ayahuasca, and certain components, chemical components. So it's very important to make sure you have a certain diet before you engage in these experiences. So, yeah.
And so those are some differences between the two. Thank you. And so with your personal journey where you had really on paper maybe an awesome life, and maybe you even felt like it was an awesome life, but there was a specific experience of grief that really brought it to your awareness, to your conscious awareness that, hey, maybe there could be more to this, because those friends had a good life, but also were working super hard, and the meaning never maybe came into their life. Maybe you could walk us through, as folks think about using psychedelics, what are the goods that might come of it? What are the upsides, we might say? What might psychedelics open them up to? And what are some downsides that folks should be aware of as they consider it?
Yeah. Of course, the upsides can be improvement in mental health and being, and spiritual connection, and connection to oneself and earth, others. So definitely, there's a lot of benefits. And there's, of course, many studies at this point that show how effective these substances can be as a treatment for depression, anxiety, PTSD. So definitely mental health, spiritual, anyone who's doing any kind of spiritual search, I would say psychedelics can be a great tool to get some answers. So these are the good outcomes, the positive outcomes that can come from it. And of course, there's so much that people talk about how they're literally a tool that can save the planet, because there's a lot of studies that show that people who use psychedelics are so much more connected to nature, find more respect towards nature. They are more likely to be people who start questioning how the society is set up, and people who may be more willing to try to change things. So there's all these benefits on an individual level and societal level. When it comes to the bad or the challenges that can come, of course, there's many contraindications that I usually mention to people when they are looking to use psychedelics. So if anyone has a history of mania or psychosis, it's usually not recommended to use psychedelics, because they can trigger those states, or even if someone has a family history, a close family member. And of course, depending on the psychedelic, there are certain medication interactions that we have to be aware of. So that's something that we need to pay attention to. And also, if someone engages in this healing work or spiritual exploration with psychedelics and they don't have any support before, during, and after, there can be challenges. And some of these experiences can be traumatizing to some people. Some people may uncover too much too soon, and they may not have the tools to process it, to ground themselves during and after. And sometimes we uncover so much and we just don't have the frameworks. We don't have ways of understanding of what happened and what we uncovered. So that's when challenges can happen. People can actually feel worse after a psychedelic experience.
And I don't want to over-index on the bad, right? It's just something I want to explore, and we can certainly get into the preparation, the during, and the after as our next question. I have a kind of a personal question I was just curious about is, you hear these stories of people, quote unquote, not coming back the same after their trip. And sometimes it's with a really challenging minds. They're just not the same person. And that's okay. I don't think we're ever the same after any major experience. And then you hear about the really, oh, they didn't come back, they're crazy now. Is that real? Is that well studied, well documented? Have you heard of that phenomenon?
Yeah, and there could be many reasons for it. Number one could be that someone could actually have a psychotic episode afterwards. So that can happen. And these go away, usually, but they can last for a while. Or they can have multiple psychotic episodes afterwards. So that's number one. Two, people can become a different person. And that's a real thing. I feel like I became a different person and I didn't like it at first. and really, honestly, I don't think I became a different person. I became who I am and who I always have been. It's just I covered it up throughout life with strong walls and defenses. So psychedelics broke down the defenses, and all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, I'm such a sensitive person, and I pick up on so much. So becoming a different person sometimes means really uncovering who you actually are, and it's not always, people don't always like it, because it requires us to make change in life and change how we operate. Maybe it requires us to develop new tools. If someone becomes more sensitive, maybe they need to focus more on self-care and grounding. And maybe all of a sudden they need more alone time. And they have to be careful what they expose themselves to, what kind of media or people or noise, all that. So that can happen for sure. So that's something we have to be prepared for. But I think in the end, it's all for the better. For me, I feel like because of that, because I became a different person, I have so much more access to my full potential. And my life has expanded. I have done so much. I have accomplished so much in the past few years. Yeah.
It's amazing. And I think for folks listening, do you have any, and I don't mean to go too off track here, how many folks really have these really terrible experiences afterwards, whether it's in integration or during? I don't know. I wonder how many are quite bad and how many are neutral and how many are okay. Do you have any sense of that in your practice?
Yeah. I believe that there's no bad trip. So if someone is having a challenging trip, it's usually, as long as they're supported properly, it's usually an amazing healing experience and they end up releasing a lot. So those challenging trips are oftentimes the most healing trips. No matter how painful, there's a lot of benefits that comes from them. But then when someone still feels a little unsettled afterwards, it may make them question, does this even work? Am I going crazy? I've heard that. People feeling like they're losing their mind. So it doesn't happen that often, but I do see clients who need a lot of support afterwards to help them integrate. And if you're feeling worse afterwards, it doesn't mean it's going to be like that forever. It just means that you need some more support. And it means that the healing process is not a straight line. And a psychedelic is not a pill that you take is going to take away all your problems. It's more like it's a relationship. It uncovers something. It helps you see something. And then you have to work with it. And you have to figure out how you're going to incorporate or integrate it. So I would say, back to your original question, does it happen a lot? It does happen. It's not, I would, on average, I would say, the positive experiences happen more than the challenging ones. And even if the challenging ones happen, it's usually for the better. There's something there that a person needs to master and they need more support. And they usually feel better eventually.
Amazing.
Yeah.
No, that's good to hear. Thanks for the comprehensive answer.
Yeah.
Because I like that, even if it's, and in my experience too, like even if it's been a bad trip, it eventually shows me something and eventually opens me up to something. And probably not at first couple of days or during the experience, but after some time. And I think it definitely profoundly changed me. With that said, let's talk about how you prep folks for an experience that's safe and that feels good, that where they find meaning. Maybe you could walk us through a potential patient who walks through your door and says, "Hey, I've heard about this. I want to explore it. I want to explore other parts of myself." What do you say next? Yeah.
Yeah, the first question will be, do you have a history of manic episodes or any psychotic episodes? And sometimes people don't know what that is or what that looks like. So I may ask them I may describe a specific symptoms that someone may be looking out for. Or I'll ask them if they have a family member with those types of symptoms. If someone says yes, and they still want to use a psychedelic, I will tell them to be really cautious. And I will tell them I don't recommend it. But if you do choose to do it, make sure you do a very low dose because you can't try those episodes, and make sure you have support afterwards. So that's number one. Number two, I may ask them what kind of medications they are on, and also what kind of psychedelic they're planning to use. Because depending on the psychedelic, depending on the medications they're on, there could be interactions. If I see something that's potentially could be a problem, I have them speak to their psychiatrist, because of course I'm not a prescriber, so I can talk about it, but I know certain things to watch out for, and I'll direct people to their psychiatrist. And then I'll ask people about their intention and the reasons why they are using why they're hoping to use a psychedelic, or what they're hoping to gain from a psychedelic trip. And that's very important. Having some intention, 1 or 2 or 3 even, can help to guide the trip. Because even when the trip becomes a little chaotic, remembering the intention helps to focus, helps the person to focus a little bit, and helps the mind to maybe bring up whatever is relevant from the subconscious mind that is related to that intention. One example of an intention may be, I want to find out what I still need to release, or I want to find out how to improve my relationship with my family. Yeah, intentions are really important. And also I'll ask people about the setting where they are planning to use the psychedelics. If they are doing it alone, we may talk through all the different things to do to make sure they're safe. So finding a sitter, a trusted friend. I may talk about what makes a sitter a good sitter. What kind of friend would be a good sitter? And usually the answer is someone that's very grounded. Ideally, someone that has a meditation practice and doesn't get unsettled easily and quickly. So we talk about sitter. If someone is going to a retreat, usually the retreat will do all the pre-screening, the medication, mental health history, so that's easier. So we talk about that, and we also talk about the plan for aftercare, whether they plan to come see me. Sometimes people will say, I'll see how it goes, and they may already have a psychiatrist, and they may come see me only for the preparation and integration. So yeah, so that'll be the before, and then after. Do you want me to talk about after?
Well, before we get to after,
Yeah.
as we talk about psychedelics, there might be a before, a during, and after, up there, or down there, or sideways. Yeah, I'm not sure if
Yes,
even
that's
time
right.
is time is as linear or chronological.
Yeah.
Just one small question: with the intentions, do you give people a totem of some kind, or how do you have them remember the intention throughout the trip? Just something I'm curious
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, so I usually recommend that it needs to be very short. If the most helpful thing is to remember an image, have some kind of symbol or an image of what they want to work on. It's nice to have pictures. If you're working on a relationship with a family member or whoever, or a friend, having a picture of that person may help. Or having some kind of symbol that represents what you're working on. So any image or any kind of symbol would be helpful. And if you're actually using words, creating an intention that is very short, and it's a word or a statement or a brief statement that they can hold on to and remember. Because of course it's hard to, while you're in this state, things are just sometimes hard to remember because there's a lot of chaos. So having something very brief, even if it's just one word or a phrase to remember, something like how to love or how to find love. Yeah, so that would be intentions, yeah.
Very nice on the intention, and maybe depending on how you prefer. I know we talked about before, so setting an intention, screening for anything that might be problematic for the person taking it, getting the setting right,
Yeah.
having the right sitter or somebody to watch with the right environment. And then we can go to after, and I also would like to hear about during. So how to reset if needed, how to take a pause from the social experience, I'm just speaking from my own personal experience, but what else, do you mind going a bit into the during, and then we
Yeah.
could go to the after?
Yeah. So first off, physical safety. Planning for physical safety is important. So finding that spot that's comfortable, having enough blankets, water, and all that, or somebody that can bring it for you if needed. Number two, if you're having a challenging trip, the number one thing that makes it challenging for people is resistance against pain. So pain will come up. That's just the nature. And it's not always, of course, people have pleasant trips as well. But those that are painful usually involve some kind of challenging emotion coming up, maybe traumatic, that the person sometimes maybe even didn't know about. That's just there in the body, stored in the body. So it comes up. And sometimes it comes up as an actual memory, a story, image. But sometimes there's no story. There's just a lot of physical discomfort. And that's usually most challenging because people like to hold on to some story, something to process, something to understand. But if it's just a lot of physical discomfort in the body, it can be really uncomfortable. People feel not in control. So the number one thing people do is resistance. People don't want to go into it. People don't want to feel it. And that's what we do when trauma happens. We disconnect, or trauma or any challenging emotions that our nervous system experiences. We like to disconnect, detach, suppress. With psychedelics, especially with higher doses, you may not have the higher the dose, the less likelihood that you actually will be able to disconnect, because you may not have a choice. It will just come out. So I would say when that happens, being able to actually feel it is like so important. What's fully felt is fully healed. So no matter how challenging and painful the experience, having your sitter hold your hand and be able to actually focus on those sensations that are coming up and move towards them rather than away from them, which means move towards them with your attention. So actually feel where they are in the body, and allowing yourself to hold them, allowing them to come up and be released. That's the only way in which they will be released, when you actually, when the person actually can fully feel those emotions and not resist them, not try to fight, which is not easy to do. But with support, with proper comfort, blankets, everything, someone holding your hand, and someone also encouraging you. Because sometimes also what happens, people when they're in these states that are challenging will feel like it will never end. So when someone is sitting with you and they tell you, you just took a psychedelic, this is what's happening, you took a psychedelic and you're going through something challenging and it will end. There is a beginning, middle, and end. This will eventually end. It will not be like this forever. That can help. I've heard a lot from a lot of clients that I work with actually doing psychedelic therapy. They would say that really helped them because it reminded them that this is not forever. This is just a process they're going through, because it's easy to lose touch with reality. So someone being the reminding that, okay, this is what's happening and you're going to be okay eventually. Yeah. So that would be, I would say, some of the things.
So feeling it in your body, leaning into it, having the support, and knowing that it's temporary, which again, you will forget. Yeah. I know that from experience for sure. And so having someone remind you, it just reminds me of a time a few years back where I was with a friend of mine, and this man was pacing around the room for 2 hours straight, just upset, like freaking out, sweating. And I'm also not sober. And I'm like, all right, I need to really put on my best yoga hat here. So I sat in my bed, he was in his bed, and I started doing my breathing and relaxing and talking through all his anxieties and stuff. And of course, I wasn't sober, but eventually he got himself into the bed with the blankets. I got him water. Eventually I went out and socialized. He didn't, but he's, what's it like out there? And I do remember almost like talking him down, but there's been other people when I've had such bad anxiety with psychedelics. And again, setting probably wasn't perfect. Yeah. More in a party setting where people were talking me down, say, yeah, this will be over. You took this. This is why you're feeling this way. It makes sense that you're feeling this way, which to my rational, me leaning towards that really helped. Can you talk about how to have a really good experience? Because I think as humans, our brains naturally orient towards the negative, especially with something that seems a little more risky and new. We try to evaluate all the negatives first, but what makes an awesome experience for folks?
Yeah, so this idea of set and setting, so you mentioned the setting already, but set is the mindset. So when people are going into the trip with anxiety, or if they, let's say the week or 2 weeks or however many before, they've been struggling and feeling really emotionally dysregulated, the chance that they will have a difficult experience is very high. That's what I've seen, at least. So the mindset you're going in, so as much as you can, preparing yourself by getting yourself in a somewhat of a calm state. And sometimes people will have anxiety about the trip, right? So that's why the preparation sessions can help to alleviate that anxiety by explaining what could happen, how you can manage that, outlining this is what you could experience, and you're going to have the support. So it is very important to manage the mindset going in. Meditation can be helpful. So people who are regular meditators tend to do better, they're usually better able to navigate psychedelic trips just because they have this skill of being able to put their attention on specific places. So being able to navigate, being able to observe what's happening rather than resist it, that can be really helpful. trying to think what else. Now, if you want to have a positive trip, again, focusing, putting your mind to doing some guided imagery, visualization before that focuses on positive emotions, qualities, things like love, calm, comfort, that can definitely help. So even doing a guided meditation as you're starting your trip, that focuses on maybe imagining your happy place, whatever that is. So yeah, that can really help.
Nice. And then I guess, could you comment, you're starting to get to know me a little bit, I'm very detail oriented.
Yeah.
So can you comment on the role of music, scent, touch,
Yeah.
the other senses during the trip, and how folks can set themselves and their group and their friends up for success with
Yeah.
some of those other pieces? You did comment a lot on mindset and setting as well, but it would be nice to hear your view on those other sensory pieces.
Yeah, so music, definitely. I would recommend using music unless you're in the middle of the trip and the music feels irritating, because that can happen too. Sometimes people do want to turn it off. But starting with music can be really helpful because the music helps to guide us on a trip. And it's best that the music doesn't have any lyrics. There's no word. It's just instrumental calming music, some nature sounds maybe, or something that you like, that it's not going to be too irritating or annoying while you're in your trip. So that's music. With sounds, I would use smells or scents. I would use them only if that's something you normally use in your everyday life, because you most likely, anyone who's going through a psychedelic experience, most of the time people are more sensitive to everything in general. So smells, sounds, touch also. So with the scents, I wouldn't use anything too strong, and only I would use something that you normally use and that you're used to. So that's scents. With the touch, it can be helpful, but it will depend on where you're at in the trip and who you are. Because some people, no matter what, they won't let anyone touch them, and that's okay. They may have a history of being abused. So I would say touch, there needs to be an agreement between the sitter and the person undergoing the trip, that the person can ask for touch. And the sitter may ask, can I touch you? Would it be helpful? But it should never be, of course, imposed. Because like I said, we tend to be more sensitive to things. It can be very grounding, especially when someone's having a difficult experience. Putting the hand on their chest and reminding them that they can breathe, reminding them that they have a chest that's moving and that is breathing, that can be helpful. Holding their hand can be helpful, but again, only if they give permission and they feel comfortable with it.
And that permission can be given in the session, in the experience. It's the person's cognizant. Understood. Anything on taste? I know, to me, food is typically distasteful when I'm tripping. But anything on taste, I might as well cover the full gamut of senses.
Normally, people don't eat during the trip. They may eat afterwards, and they may find that food tastes differently. It's more flavorful because they're more sensitive. But during the trip, I would say, for the most part, I don't remember many people that wanted to eat during the trip. And I think it can actually maybe diminish the effects of the psychedelic if you eat during. Or make you nauseous, for sure. That could happen. So during, people usually drink water, sometimes water with lemon maybe if they want that, or something, some flavorful, or whatever they like to drink during. But other than that, not much, I would say.
Okay, and then sight. I don't know. Maybe is there anything to add on the last sense, sight?
On the what?
Vision. On vision.
Vision.
Yeah.
Some people will do well with eye shades. And actually, I would say that's a good thing to have, to be able to, eye shades. Close your eyes, and either just close your eyes or have eye shades. That can help people go inward and process what's happening and minimize distractions. So that can be helpful. Other than that, some people do like to trip with eyes open, because they'll have visuals. They'll see, especially if they're outside, they may see trees moving or whatever, like all kinds of visuals that are pleasant. The only thing is that if you focus too much of your attention outside, sometimes you may get distracted from the inner work that's happening. So that's something to watch out for and pay attention to. Are you using the visuals and the stimulation that's out there as a distraction from what's happening inwardly? So that's something to be aware of.
And it might be fine to do, right, in ways, but also
Yeah.
you came for an
Yeah.
intention and a reason.
Yeah.
And having fun is good too, and seeing cool things outside.
Yeah, of course.
And let me just check my list here. I guess we should probably touch on integration and afterwards. What really caught my attention with what you shared earlier was being so sensitive in the days or weeks or months or thereafter.
Mhm.
What is that about from your knowledge scientifically, and what have you seen with patients, and why does that happen?
Yeah, I think it goes back to this idea that psychedelics break down our walls. We all develop walls and defenses throughout life to be able to function. And it happens very early, oftentimes when we're children. We have to become someone. We develop an identity sometimes to be able to relate to those around us and then just be able to function in the world. And especially now, there's so much stimulation, all the media and everything, so much thrown at us, which requires a lot of protection, a lot of walls, strong walls. So psychedelics can break those walls down, and sometimes once the cat is out of the bag, you can't put it back in. So once the walls are gone, it's not so easy to rebuild them. All of a sudden you find yourself being a different person. So you may be more sensitive. And for some people, it's just for a short period of time afterwards. And they go back to more normal-ish, or maybe they're still different, but maybe not as sensitive. But for some people, they just remain sensitive and they realize, oh, this is who I am and who I always have been. And again, it's not a bad thing. It just requires more awareness and work on boundaries and having tools to manage that.
And it sounds like they might have been seeking that in the first place, right?
Yeah.
I certainly can say that some of my experiences opened me up. I'm profoundly different, really different. I could
Mm-hmm.
not dance for my life. I didn't know what dancing was. I just couldn't figure it out until at some point it just clicked for me when I was not sober. And now I can dance and enjoy it and have fun and not be
Oh,
self-conscious about it. And it took a lot
that's
of
great.
dancing in public, like concerts and stuff, to finally stop being self-conscious about it. But definitely something clicked in one of my experiences, and even that was just
Yeah.
profound to me.
Yeah.
And that said, with the
Great.
sensitivity, so how do folks deal with that with you in their like off ramp with
Mm-hmm.
they find themselves going to work a week later and they're like, this is not even me. What am I doing here? Or
Mm-hmm.
what do you do with folks afterwards, generally speaking?
Yeah, so what you just said, like people all of a sudden realize, what am I doing here in my life? I don't want to live this life, maybe, right? That comes up.
Hmm.
With people like that, I usually say, wait until you make any major life changes. I literally have people come after a retreat and say, you know what,
Good
I
job.
had someone who, yeah, I'm quitting my job and I'm getting a divorce because this is not my life. This is not who I am. So I'll usually say, wait with major changes like that, wait at least 6 months or so.
It's
Give
tough to
yourself
wait
time.
though, because that message comes to you. You feel like whether it's from an entity, from within, from without, but how can you
Yeah,
go back to a job, but let alone your relationship that you
yeah.
don't feel you belong in? So how do you give people the patience to wait 6 months? Is there a patience pill you give them? Is there a patience psychedelic?
We usually process the feelings that come out because feelings are really strong right afterwards. It's like this strong belief: I need to quit my this is I don't want to be. I have one person that was a doctor, and they were like, I can't be a doctor anymore. So it's something like you invested years in this career and you have a family. Maybe let's take some time to process it and integrate it to see if maybe there's a different way of working as a doctor, or maybe there's little tweaks you can make that will still make it enjoyable. So I usually say, let's work on integrating what you just have seen and experienced, and let's maybe make gradual changes. And if after X number of months you still feel like this is the path, then you at least will have the groundwork to make that big change. Because any big change like that, it requires a few steps. You can't just quit and be without a livelihood, for most people at least. So we work through it, we set goals, we check in, and we do a lot of clarifying, a lot of meditation, a lot of
Hmm.
journaling to help to clarify what did you just find out? How can you make those changes in your life and
In
all
the
that?
session, you'll do some meditation, some journaling.
In the session, and or I'll assign things for people to do at
Hmm.
home.
Like,
Yeah.
yes. And when they come in the next week, you say, hey, did you do that? Let's see it. How did it go?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
What came up? Yeah.
What came up? Are there
Yeah.
any, just the last few questions for me, are there anything you recommend around food consumption, exercise, sleep for the following week and then the following six
Mhm.
months? How holistic do you get with a 360 view for someone?
Mhm. Yeah, so exercise is that's the number one thing I recommend, and it doesn't have to be anything strenuous. Even a walk, 30 minutes a day would be helpful.
Hmm. Hmm.
So movement, mainly because whether it's a walk or some people may like yoga or more somatic practices, the movement is important because it helps to move that energy that may be coming up, the emotions,
Hmm.
whatever got unlocked in the body
Hmm.
may still be coming out in some way. So by movement, by moving, or dance is a good one also, using dance, it helps people to move that energy and it helps them feel more grounded. So that's number one.
Hmm.
With food, it depends because sometimes it's hard for someone. Of course, I would if I were to recommend, I would say plant-based diet would be the best, or a diet that's not acidic, very acidic. So avoiding too much caffeine, too much alcohol, stimulants, and all that, and plant-based as much as possible. But that's not always part of the person's lifestyle. I would recommend that. Sometimes people will incorporate some of it, sometimes not. And then number three is having some kind of meditation or grounding practice, or even if it's just taking a moment each day for literally, I say 60 seconds to check in with your body. That's going to
Hmm.
be important. Yeah,
Hmm. So movement to move the energy around, whether it's a walk
yeah,
or whatever
yeah,
practice people like. Food wise, you lean towards plant-based.
yeah.
And what's your thinking around that so folks know, especially in the context of psychedelics? And then we can the third point about grounding. But if you could tell me
So
about the food, yeah.
the food. I just feel like the goal is to support, nourish, and replenish the body as much as possible. Fruits and vegetables tend to have a lot of antioxidants. And again, making the environment in the body just less acidic and more nourished, more delivering vitamins and antioxidants is important because it supports the body, makes the body stronger, and the brain also, of course. The psychedelic experience can feel draining because people go, again, it can feel like years of therapy. So
Totally.
it unlocks a lot from the body. So people can feel tired and drained. So again, getting a lot, you mentioned sleep, getting a lot of
Hmm.
sleep, but also the plant-based diet helps to just replenish the body and strengthen the body. And also having enough protein is good too. And it can be plant-based. Some people may use animal protein or fish.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Cool.
replenishing the body. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And I think it is really draining. And I find like a green juice afterwards, smoothies,
Yeah.
vitamins,
Yeah.
definitely I find like lighter food in the first
Yeah.
day or two like really helps. And definitely for me, plant forward. So making sure whole plants, making sure you're getting the
Yeah.
fiber for your microbiome and things like that,
Yeah.
good fermented food. So awesome. And then the grounding
Yeah.
practice, just at least once a day, 60 seconds, check in. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, build from there. If they can meditate more or breath work more, it's not going to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So very
Yeah.
good. We went through the whole gamut, I think, of the
That's right.
preparation, the during, and the experience. Is there any like last message you'd like to get out there to folks, thinking about trying this, or they maybe had an experience in the past and want to try it again? What message would you like to get out to folks listening there, Amelia?
One message I want to get out is that healing is not a straight line, and that even that if you don't get what you expected from a psychedelic experience, maybe you get what you needed, and maybe even if you don't feel better right away, it's a journey, and with some work and support, there's always room for more growth and healing.
Amazing. Amelia Sabatowska, thank you so much for coming on to Green Pill. This was awesome. Where can
Thank you.
folks find you? Could you give us your website, your social, and we'll also link it in the description.
Yeah, so my website is integrationliving.com. And
Okay.
we are also on Instagram, Integration Living, and Facebook, Integration Living. And I think that's about it in terms of socials.
That's,
Yeah.
that's enough, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you again so much. I'll link that in the show notes. Thanks for coming on. I think it was a really
All
tour de
right.
force of this subject. So I think folks will really benefit. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for having me.